Federal agents just stormed a fortress in Minneapolis. Over 120 officers deployed.
At 4:52 this morning, we executed a multi-agency raid. One agent was shot.
4:52 a.m., December 18th, 2025, Minneapolis, Minnesota. The temperature was 9 degrees below zero. Frost covered every window on Cedar Riverside. The streets were silent, but federal agents were already moving. Unmarked black Suburbans rolled through the darkness. No lights, no sirens, just the crunch of snow under heavy tires. FBI, ICE, ATF, U.S. Marshals, over 120 agents converging on a single address. The target wasn't a warehouse, it wasn't a trap house, it was a fortress, a compound-style residence near the West Bank. High walls, reinforced steel doors, security cameras on every corner, bars on windows 3 stories up. Neighbors called it the castle. Federal agents called it something else, a criminal empire. If you want the full truth about what happened next, hit like so this story reaches more people. The battering ram hit the front door at 4:53 a.m. The sound echoed through the frozen streets like a gunshot. Metal screeched. The door held. Agents hit it again, harder. The frame cracked. On the third strike, the door exploded inward. Flashbangs detonated inside. Agents poured through the breach, shouting, commands in English and Somali. Tactical lights cut through smoke. K9 units barked. Boots thundered on wood floors. Then gunfire. 3 shots from the second floor. Sharp. Rapid. An FBI agent collapsed. His vest caught 2 rounds. The third tore through his shoulder. Blood pooled on the hardwood. Agents returned fire. The shooter dropped his weapon and fled deeper into the house. Chaos erupted. Dozens of people scattered in every direction. Men, women, children. Some ran for back exits. Others dove through windows. Agents grabbed suspects as they bolted. Handcuffs clicked. Shouts mixed with screams. The fortress was no longer silent. But this wasn't panic. This was precision. FBI teams secured the first floor in under 90 seconds. ICE agents locked down the perimeter. ATF swept room by room. U.S. Marshals covered exits. Every movement was calculated. Every corner cleared. This operation had been planned for 8 months. What they found inside would expose a network reaching across 7 countries. Let me show you how deep this goes. The investigation began on April 22, 2025. A tip came through the Minneapolis FBI field office. Anonymous, detailed, specific. It described a human trafficking operation disguised as refugee resettlement assistance. Young men, Somali nationals, brought into the United States under false pretenses. Not families seeking safety, not refugees fleeing violence. Young men, hundreds of them, funneled through a network of fraudulent visa applications, forged documents, and corrupted immigration officials. The tip included names, addresses, bank accounts, wire transfer records showing payments labeled as humanitarian aid that totaled $8.7 million over 18 months. Federal agents didn't dismiss it. They dug deeper. By May 2025, investigators had identified the central figure, Abdirahman Hassan Khalif, 43 years old, Somali-American businessman, owner of 3 import-export companies, board member of 2 nonprofit organizations, respected community leader. On paper, Khalif was legitimate, successful, generous, but the paper was thin. Bank records showed wire transfers to accounts in Kenya, Somalia, Turkey, and the UAE. Amounts varied, $40,000 here, $120,000 there, always below reporting thresholds, always labeled as business expenses or charitable donations. But the destinations told a different story. Shell companies, fake charities, accounts with no operational history, money flowing in, nothing flowing out except more money to different accounts. A classic laundering operation. Investigators began surveillance in June 2025. The fortress on Cedar Riverside became the focus. Khalif lived there with his family, but the family was small, 3 people. Yet the fortress had activity around the clock. Vehicles arriving at 2 a.m., people entering through side doors, lights on in the basement until dawn. Agents watched, photographed, documented. What they saw didn't match the narrative of a legitimate businessman. Young men, dozens of them. Coming and going at all hours. No women, no children, just young men. Some stayed for days, others disappeared after a single night. License plates from 6 different states: Minnesota, Ohio, Tennessee, Georgia, Texas, Washington. The pattern was unmistakable. If this shocks you, comment exposed below. By August 2025, agents had enough for a wiretap. Federal judges approved surveillance on 4 phone lines. Khalif's personal cell. 2 burner phones traced to the fortress. One line registered to his business. The calls were damning. Khalif spoke in Somali, English, broken Arabic. He coordinated arrivals, departure dates, payments. He used coded language that wasn't coded enough. Packages arriving from Nairobi, deliveries heading to Columbus, fees owed by Friday. One call stood out. September 14, 2025, 11:47 p.m. Khalif spoke to a contact in Istanbul. The conversation lasted 19 minutes. Khalif mentioned 42 new arrivals expected by October. He discussed processing fees of $12,000 per person. He confirmed payments to our friends in customs. That last phrase triggered alarm bells. Corrupted officials inside the system. That changed everything. Agents cross-referenced travel records, immigration databases, customs logs. They found discrepancies. Visa applications approved without standard vetting. Entry interviews waived. Background checks incomplete. All processed through the same 3 customs officers at Minneapolis-St. Paul International Airport. The conspiracy went deeper than trafficking. It included federal employees. By October 2025, the case expanded. FBI brought in Homeland Security investigations. Internal Affairs launched parallel probes into the 3 customs officers. Financial crimes units traced money to offshore accounts in the Cayman Islands. The network wasn't just moving people, it was moving money, drugs, weapons. Surveillance teams followed vehicles from the fortress to warehouses in St. Paul. They observed late-night deliveries, crates unloaded, no paperwork, no inspections, just cash exchanges and handshakes. Undercover agents made contact with lower-level operatives. They posed as buyers. They negotiated deals. They gathered evidence. One transaction stood out. November 3, 2025. An undercover agent purchased 4.7 kilograms of heroin from a contact linked to the fortress. The drugs came wrapped in coffee packaging, Turkish labels. The supplier bragged about shipments arriving weekly through clean channels. Clean channels meant corrupted ports of entry. The operation wasn't small-time. It was industrial. Type yes if you want to see what happened next. By mid-November 2025, federal prosecutors had enough. Indictments were drafted, arrest warrants signed, seizure orders issued. The operation was named Fortress Down. Over 80 agents were briefed, maps distributed, entry points assigned, contingency plans rehearsed. The raid was set for December 18, 2025, pre-dawn, maximum surprise. But intelligence suggested armed resistance. Informants reported weapons inside the fortress, handguns, rifles, possibly explosives. The Caliph had hired private security, former military, men trained to protect the compound. Federal planners adjusted tactics, heavier armor, more firepower, medical units on standby. The stakes were clear. This wasn't just an arrest. It was dismantling an empire. December 18, 2025, 4:30 a.m. Agents assembled 3 blocks from the target. Final checks. Communications tested. Body cameras activated. The team leader gave the green light at 4:47 a.m. 5 minutes later, the battering ram hit the door. The gunfire that followed wasn't unexpected, but it was shocking. Federal agents don't expect resistance in residential neighborhoods. They expect surrender. They expect compliance. They got war. The shooter on the 2nd floor fired from a bedroom doorway. 3 rounds. Fast. Accurate. Special Agent Marcus Delgado went down. His team dragged him to cover. Medics responded. The wound wasn't fatal, but it was serious. Agents returned fire. Controlled bursts. The shooter retreated. Agents pursued. They found him hiding in a closet. Weapon discarded. Hands up. He was cuffed within seconds, but the damage was done. A federal agent had been shot. That escalated everything. Tactical teams swept faster, harder, room by room, closet by closet, basement to attic. They found people hiding in air ducts, behind false walls, under floorboards. 53 individuals detained in the first 30 minutes. Most were young men, Somali nationals, ages 19 to 32. No documentation, no passports, no legal status. They spoke broken English. They claimed they were refugees. They said Khalif promised them work, safety, a better life, but their stories didn't match. Investigators separated them, interviewed each individually. The details unraveled fast. These weren't refugees, they were laborers. Brought to the United States under false pretenses, forced to work in construction, meatpacking plants, warehouses, paid nothing or nearly nothing, housed in cramped conditions, threatened with deportation if they resisted. This wasn't resettlement, it was modern slavery. Share this so more communities understand what's happening. The evidence found inside the fortress was staggering. Agents discovered ledgers in the basement, handwritten, meticulous, names, dates, amounts paid, services rendered. The ledgers documented 387 individuals trafficked between March 2023 and December 2025. Cash was hidden throughout the house, behind drywall in the kitchen, $340,000 in vacuum-sealed bags, under the bathroom sink, $89,000 in 20s and 50s, inside a false bottom in a bedroom dresser, to $10,000 in hundreds. Total cash recovered exceeded $1.2 million. But it wasn't just money. Agents found weapons, 14 handguns, 4 AR-15 rifles, 2 shotguns, over 3,000 rounds of ammunition. Some firearms had serial numbers filed off. Others were registered to individuals with no connection to Khalif, stolen, trafficked, untraceable. The basement revealed more, a hidden room, accessed through a false wall behind a water heater. Inside, agents found documents, passports, blank visa applications, forged immigration stamps, customs forms pre-signed by the 3 corrupted officers. This wasn't just trafficking, it was institutional corruption. Digital evidence was equally damning. Agents seized 12 laptops, 37 cell phones, 4 encrypted servers. Forensic teams cracked passwords. They found communications spanning 3 years. Messages coordinating arrivals, payment confirmations, threats against those who tried to leave. One message read, "If you talk, your family in Mogadishu will pay." Another, "Police won't help you. You're illegal. You're nothing." The cruelty was systematic. But the most shocking discovery came from financial records. Agents traced wire transfers to accounts in 7 countries: Kenya, Somalia, Turkey, UAE, Egypt, Malaysia, United States. The network moved $47.3 million between April 2023 and November 2025. Some payments went to smuggling operations, others to corrupt officials. The 3 customs officers at MSP Airport received a combined $890,000 over 2 years. Payments disguised as consulting fees, investment returns, personal loans. Federal prosecutors called it the largest human trafficking conspiracy in Minnesota history. But it didn't stop at trafficking. Agents connected the fortress to drug distribution. The heroin purchased in November traced back to shipments arriving through MSP Airport. Over 180 kilograms moved through Minneapolis between January and December 2025. Street value, $22 million. The same network trafficking people was trafficking drugs, and weapons, and money, and corruption. This wasn't a criminal organization. It was an empire. If you believe justice matters, comment justice below. Arrests came fast. Abdirahman Hassan Khalif was detained inside the fortress. He refused to speak. Lawyers arrived within hours. He was charged with human trafficking, drug distribution, money laundering, conspiracy to defraud the United States, bribery of federal officials, assault on a federal agent. The charges carried a combined sentence exceeding 200 years. But Khalif wasn't alone. Agents arrested 17 others inside the fortress: associates, enforcers, facilitators. Each faced multiple federal charges. Some cooperated immediately, others stayed silent. But the evidence didn't need their words. The 3 corrupted customs officers were arrested the same morning. At their homes, no resistance, just shock. They were charged with bribery, conspiracy, abuse of official position. Their careers were over, their pensions forfeited, their freedom gone. Federal prosecutors moved aggressively. Asset seizures began within 48 hours. The fortress was confiscated. Khalif's businesses shut down, bank accounts frozen, vehicles seized, over $14 million in assets taken into federal custody, proceeds from crime, every dollar traceable. Every asset contaminated by corruption. But the arrests didn't stop in Minneapolis. Coordinated raids hit locations in 6 states: Columbus, Ohio, Nashville, Tennessee, Atlanta, Georgia, Houston, Texas, Seattle, Washington, Phoenix, Arizona. Over 90 additional arrests, more evidence seized, more victims identified. The network was national. International warrants were issued for contacts in Kenya, Somalia, and Turkey. Interpol circulated red notices. Extradition requests filed. The FBI wasn't just dismantling the Minneapolis cell. They were destroying the entire network. And it worked. By January 2026, federal prosecutors had secured indictments against 127 individuals. 43 had already pleaded guilty. Cooperation agreements were signed, testimony secured, trials scheduled. But the human cost couldn't be undone. Investigators identified 387 victims. Young men brought to America under false promises, exploited, threatened, trapped. Many were deported. Some were granted protective status. A few disappeared. The trauma remained. Communities were shattered. Cedar Riverside residents felt betrayed. Khalif was a respected figure, a leader, a philanthropist. His crimes stained the entire neighborhood. Trust eroded. Fear spread. Federal agents held community meetings. They explained the operation. They assured safety, but words couldn't heal wounds that deep. The Somali-American community in Minneapolis struggled with the fallout. Khalif's actions fueled stereotypes. Hate incidents increased. Community organizations condemned the trafficking. They separated the criminal from the community, but the damage lingered. This wasn't just about one man. It was about broken systems. How did customs officers become corrupted? How did traffickers operate for years undetected? How did a fortress full of victims exist in plain sight? Those questions demanded answers. Hit subscribe so you don't miss what comes next. Federal reviews began immediately. Homeland Security launched internal audits. Customs and Border Protection tightened vetting procedures. Immigration databases were cross-referenced. Red flags were established. Supervisory oversight increased. Congress held hearings in January 2026. Lawmakers questioned FBI directors, ICE officials, CBP leaders. They demanded accountability. They demanded reform. Bills were introduced. Funding increased for anti-trafficking units. Penalties enhanced for corrupted officials. But laws alone don't stop corruption. The Minneapolis case revealed structural weaknesses. Criminals exploit bureaucracy. They find gaps. They bribe insiders. They build empires in the shadows. Federal agencies acknowledged failures. They promised change. But promises aren't guarantees. The trial for Abdirahman Hassan Khalif is scheduled for June 2026. Federal prosecutors are prepared. Evidence is overwhelming. Witnesses are ready. Conviction seems certain, but the damage is done. Families destroyed. Lives shattered. Trust broken. A community scarred. The fortress is gone. But the memory remains, and the fight continues, because this wasn't an isolated case. Human trafficking happens in every state. Criminal networks operate in every city. Corruption infects institutions across the country. The Minneapolis raid exposed one empire, but how many others remain? Federal agents are watching, investigating, building cases. More raids are coming. More networks will fall, but they can't do it alone. Communities must stay vigilant, report suspicious activity, support victims, demand accountability, because crime doesn't happen in a vacuum. It thrives in silence. It grows in indifference. It wins when people look away. The fortress fell because someone spoke up. An anonymous tip, a single call. That's all it took to launch an 8-month investigation, to deploy 120 agents, to dismantle an empire moving $47 million and exploiting nearly 400 victims. One voice made the difference. Your voice can too. If you see something, say something. If you suspect trafficking, report it. If you witness corruption, expose it. The systems only work when people engage, when citizens demand justice, when communities refuse to accept crime as normal. The Minneapolis raid proved that evil can hide behind respectability. Khalif was a businessman, a community leader, a respected figure, but beneath the surface, he was a monster. Monsters wear many faces. They operate in many forms. They hide in plain sight, until someone refuses to look away. Share this video before it gets buried. The agents who raided the fortress risked everything. They faced gunfire. They confronted armed resistance. One was shot. Others could have died. But they kept moving. They executed their mission. They brought justice. They deserve recognition. They deserve support. They deserve a system that backs them when they stand against corruption. The victims deserve more. They deserve compensation. They deserve protection. They deserve a chance to rebuild lives stolen from them. Federal programs exist. Support services are available. But resources are limited. Funding is insufficient. The need exceeds the response. That must change. Lawmakers, citizens, organizations. Everyone has a role. Increase funding, expand services, strengthen laws, support survivors, hold criminals accountable, build systems that prevent exploitation before it starts. The fortress is gone. The empire is dismantled, but the work isn't finished. Because somewhere right now, another network is operating. Another criminal is exploiting victims. Another official is taking bribes. Another fortress is hiding in plain sight. Until every network is exposed, until every victim is free, until every corrupt official is prosecuted, the fight continues. This is only the beginning. Comment Fortress if you stand for justice. Hit like if you believe corruption must end. Share this story so others see the truth. Subscribe so you don't miss the next investigation. The fortress fell. But the war against trafficking isn't over. Stay informed, stay vigilant, stay engaged, because justice doesn't happen by accident. It happens when people refuse to be silent, when communities demand accountability, when the truth is too loud to ignore. The raid on December 18, 2025 changed Minneapolis. It exposed a network, it freed victims, it sent a message: no fortress is untouchable, no empire is invincible, no criminal is beyond justice. Let that message spread. Let it reach every corner. Let it shake every network operating in the shadows. The fortress fell, and more will follow.